Grace, pace and space. That's the old Jaguar adage, isn't it? And when it comes to the modern Jaguars, those three things hold true. They're all incredibly beautiful to look at, enthralling to drive, and especially in the case of this F-Pace, pretty spacious too. But those three Jaguar typical traits are not the only things buyers look for in a luxury car. And of late, Jags have been lacking in a few other areas. Well, this is the 2021 Jaguar F-Pace facelift, and it claims to have remedied some of those problems. So I'm going to tell you what all's new with this car, and of course, I'm going to drive it because it's a Jag. But hey, before we go any further, tell us down in the comments what you think of the Jaguar F-Pace facelift. Is it a big improvement, and would you pick it over any of its rivals? And also, if you like this video, do give it a like and subscribe to the Autocar India channel if you haven't, and click the bell icon to stay notified every time we make a new upload. It's a good thing we're on the inside on this very rainy day, because it's also where there's the most to unpack. The interior is an area where the F-Pace wasn't quite up to scratch, and oh boy, have they fixed that. It feels like you're sitting in a completely different car. They've borrowed a lot of parts from the Range Rover parts bin, including these brushed aluminium window switches. In fact, there's brushed aluminium in a lot more places, and it just does wonders to lift up the cabin ambience. Though the quality in the old F-Pace was decent, there was simply too much black plastic all over the place, everywhere you looked and everywhere you touched. Now there's brushed aluminium effect on the steering wheel, on the dashboard, on the door grabs, on the window switches, on the door handles, and of course on the center console as well. It's even on the stalks and on the paddles now. And here too, it's not just cheap feeling trim that merely looks premium, it actually feels nice to touch. Cool metallic surfaces, and even the plastic quality overall has improved quite a bit. Look really hard and you might find some odd bad plastics hidden away. There's a seat recline switch in the back seat that seems to have been taken from an old Ford from back in the Jaguar Ford days. There are other premium touches too. The leather feels softer, it's double stitched, there's a nice red shade, but you also get the option of tan. And overall, there is a far greater feeling of richness to this cabin. Even the steering wheel, it's wrapped in softer leather than before, and it just looks a whole lot more upmarket. Gone is the old rotary gear selector, and in its place is a more conventional one that uses this small stubby selector. It's got these seamed stitches down the center, which Jaguar says is supposed to resemble the stitches on a cricket ball. Talk about really leaning into their British heritage. Now, while all this does play a very big part, what really drives the point home is the new tech. I'll start with that screen over there, which is the latest version of Jaguar Land Rover's digital dials. It's very crisp, it's very bright, and very easy to read on the move. Moreover, you can configure it in a number of different ways: a single dial, dual dials, or just even a screen full of information, or even the map. Gives you a lot of variety, and all of it is very easy to use. More significant than that even, however, is this screen right here. It measures 11.4 inches across, and it uses Jaguar Land Rover's new Pivi Pro infotainment system. Now you're probably thinking that 11.4 inches sounds a little bit smaller than the screens that some rivals offer. It's more than the size of the screen or the cross-sectional length. It's actually the shape that matters more. And that means a lot more usable real estate in one squarish shape. And just this new Pivi Pro system, it is such a leap ahead of the old In Control Touch Pro system that Jaguar Land Rover used to use. The crispness and the smoothness with which it works, and how easy it is to use, and where they place everything, it's all finally up to date and up there with the best in the segment when it comes to usability and just aesthetic appeal. Further down, you will find the new, more modern, context-sensitive AC controls, which means that by default these lovely knurled knobs control the temperature, but if you pull on them, it changes to controlling the fan speed. What I'm not such a big fan of is that the rest of the AC controls have now been consigned to this black touch panel, which means they aren't physical buttons. Yes, there is haptic feedback, so you've got to press down pretty hard, but there's no physical, tactile way to separate each of these buttons. They're just lights on a screen. I do like the established 1935 Jaguar Coventry logo though, it's very classy. And as you might expect from any good facelift, they've also upped the equipment list. So let's have a look at that now. The list is pretty generous, but there are a few things missing that we'd have liked to see at this price, like a powered steering column adjuster, heated and cooled front seats, and perhaps some window blinds for the rear seats. But even without them, there's a good reason you'll want to spend time in the back seat. And that's because, despite what that sleek roof might have you think, it's really comfortable and spacious here, with generous leg and headroom even for those taller than my 5'7" frame. The seat back reclines electrically but very slightly, and there's also 4-zone climate control and a huge sunroof, which is now a large single fixed piece of glass that does not open but lets in loads of light. The boot is also bigger than you might think, capable of swallowing 613 liters of your stuff under a tailgate that's now thankfully powered. The F-Pace blew our collective minds with the way it looked when it was first revealed in 2015, and thankfully with the facelift they've managed to subtly update it without messing with the formula too much. The headlamps are slimmer adaptive LED units, and the J-Blade DRL signature from before has evolved into a double J-Blade. The grille is larger and speckled with dark metallic studs, while large air intakes feed the radiators down in the bumpers. The tail lamps are a minimalist interpretation of the original style, and further tidying up the rear is a clean new bumper with a neat blacked out insert resembling a diffuser. We just wish they'd have given us a new design for the wheels. These twin 5-spoke 19-inch alloys are smart, but they are the same ones they used in 2016. Still, all said and done, it's a welcome update to a winning formula. So that was the Grace. Now it's time for the Pace. So yeah, there have been some changes on the outside and on the inside, but where there hasn't been too much of a change is in the mechanicals. What you still get is a choice of a 2-litre petrol or a 2-litre diesel, both from the Ingenium engine family. Now there have been some variations in power and torque over the years, updates that have come through since the car was originally launched. So at present we're driving the 2-litre petrol, and it makes 250 horsepower and 365 Newton meters of torque. Now those numbers are pretty decent on paper, but more than that, it's the way this engine feels. In true Jaguar fashion, it's quite rev happy, and it doesn't have that overtly turbocharged feel, and that makes it really enjoyable to drive to its very limit when you're in the mood. The best part is it doesn't feel absolutely dead at low revs either, and that's because of the gearbox and the way it's tuned. What's more, as long as you have it in comfort mode, it's pretty refined as well. But say you knock it up into dynamic mode and put the gearbox in sport, you get quite an encouraging growl. Although I suspect some of that comes in through the speakers. One thing that does not change with the drive modes, however, is the suspension, as it is passive. But before you write off the F-Pace for having two basic suspension, you should have a drive in it. And that's because once again, Jaguar has absolutely nailed the ride and handling balance with this car. Without any adaptive trickery, it manages to be comfortable at low speeds and tighten up nicely as you start to push it harder. If there's perhaps one criticism I have of the ride quality, it's that the big tires can be felt over road undulations and uneven surfaces. And yes, you do get a bit of road and tire noise filtering into the cabin, but apart from that, it is a superb ride and handling mix. The 2021 F-Pace costs 69.9 lakh rupees, and that's irrespective of whether you choose the petrol or the diesel, and that actually is bang on for this car's size and spec. But really, this is a car that's greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, the facelift has added some new bits on the outside and a lot more equipment, but fundamentally, this is an excellent car to drive and an excellent car to look at. But what the facelift has really done is up the luxury quotient. It's far greater inside than the car it replaces, and right up there with the best in the segment. So, if the F-Pace had dropped off your luxury SUV radar before, let me assure you, it should be right back up there now.
Ready, sir?
Fine, if you just want to be in the frame, that's great, eh? The truth is that this car is more than the sum of its parts. Yes, it's got some more equipment and, well, we tried, but it didn't work, okay. Grace, pace and space, that's the old Jaguar adage, isn't it? Well, by and large, the new Jaguars also follow that. Follow. And it's gone. I just had 4G, it's gone.